Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and Jai Hind. On behalf of Team CASA, I, Lieutenant General Gautam Murthy, Founder and Managing Director, welcome you all to this all-important CASA webinar, our 38th so far, on G20 in Srinagar. India steps up to the challenge. At the outset, our apologies for the snafu that took place 2 days ago because of some technical issues. But as you can see, we have set that right, and we are going full ahead with this webinar. Our previous webinar on 6th of May was titled Managing Perceptions, India's Global Influence, G20 and Beyond. In that webinar, our eminent panel of Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, and Colonel Ashwini Sharma, ably steered by General Atta Hasnain, discussed as to how India, in the backdrop of handling the COVID pandemic, vaccine diplomacy, its rapid economic recovery, its stand on the Russian-Ukraine war, etc., ought to leverage its leadership role in the SCO and G20 to manage perceptions of its rise, especially in the geostrategic firmament. Although planned much earlier, almost as if on cue, India has held an important G20 meeting from 22nd to 24th of May of about 60 foreign delegates in the heart of the Kashmir Valley on the banks of the picturesque Dal Lake. What unfortunately made the news is of countries boycotting the meeting, from the usual suspects, China and Pakistan, to Turkey and Saudi Arabia. What ought to have actually made the news is the number of countries, including many from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, that attended the meeting despite a naked threat to disrupt the meeting from Pakistan's immature, and if I may say so, asinine Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto. With India stepping up to the challenge, where do we go from here? To discuss this and a lot more, we have yet another erudite panel of speakers, all experts in their field. Our first speaker of the evening is Ambassador Mr. Ashok Sajanhar. Ambassador Sajanhar is the Executive Council member, Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defence Studies and Analysis, Distinguished Fellow, Ananta Aspen Center, and former Ambassador of India to Kazakhstan, Sweden, and Latvia. In his 34 years of service, apart from holding the post of ambassador to the countries mentioned, Ambassador Ashok has worked in senior diplomatic positions in Indian embassies and missions in Washington, D.C., Brussels, Moscow, Geneva, Tehran, Dhaka, and Bangkok, and also at our headquarters in India. He worked as the head of the National Foundation for Communal Harmony to promote amity and understanding between different religions, faiths, and belief. He's been decorated by the governments of Kazakhstan and Latvia with the national awards, and by the Universal Peace Federation, a New York body, with the title Ambassador of Peace. Ambassador Sajanhar writes, travels, and speaks extensively on issues relating to international relations, foreign policy, and themes of contemporary relevance and significance. He appears widely on TV panel discussions. We welcome you, Mr. Ashok Sajanhar, and look forward to hearing from you about the diplomatic challenges ahead post this red letter event. Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Kuldeep Khoda, IPS, former DGP, J&K. Mr. Khoda is an MSc in physics with specialization in nuclear physics from IIT Delhi and 2 years research experience in solid state physics. He joined the IPS in 1974 and used his excellent understanding of physics and sciences, and he led the J&K police for 5 years during the tumultuous change in J&K from 2007 to 2012, in one of the most challenging jobs of India. There's none better than Mr. Khoda, who knows the internal dynamics of policing in J&K, a large part of which lies in the intelligence and counterterrorism domains, to speak to us on the subject. Being a keen observer of the change that has taken place, we look forward to hearing from what he has to say. Welcome to the program, Mr. Khoda, if you can hear us, and we look forward to hearing your views. Our last speaker of the evening is Mr. Sajid Yusuf Shah, Mr. Shah is a lawyer, writer, political commentator, and an activist based in Srinagar. He is an astute observer on geopolitics, national security, extremism, and terrorism. Mr. Shah appears regularly on Indian and international uh, shows on speaks on terrorism. A prominent voice from the Valley, we welcome you and look forward to hearing your views on the impact that this meeting has had on the citizens of J&K. Welcome to the show, Mr. Shah. Our moderator is none other than Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, PVSM, UYSM, ABSM, SMVSM, and BAG, who needs no introduction as he's one of our foremost voices on defense and strategic affairs. His last assignment and service was as a military secretary. Prior to that, he commanded 15 Corps headquartered at Srinagar and has held a number of prestigious command staff and instructional appointments, as well as served in a UN mission abroad. In 2018, General Hasnain was appointed as the Chancellor of Central University of J&K. In February 2020, he was appointed member of the NDMA in the rank of Secretary to the Government of India. In that appointment, he's currently also a member of the Empowered Committee for Information and Communication set up by the PMO. As all are aware, he also finds time to write and comment on geopolitics and speaks extensively in various fora. Welcome to this program, sir. I now hand over the proceedings to you to conduct the rest of the webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, General Murthy. Thank you very much. And thank you for setting up this very, very important panel, this discussion. The panel speaks for itself. I don't really have to go too much into details here. The panel speaks for itself. But let me have my time in the air and first 3-4 minutes to just speak a few aspects. G20, the meeting in Srinagar, the decision was an outstanding decision, as bold as the decision of 5th of August 2019. Things could have gone horribly wrong if you had a smart set of separatists, smart set of terrorists, thinking terrorists, people who thought on their feet. They would have probably been able to put their act together and target this kind of a meeting. And I wrote extensively about it. I felt that if you think that if terrorists think that they can target a place like Srinagar under these circumstances, they got to think again. But peripherally, they could have targeted a lot of other places with small acts and tried to show the world that they were still a force to reckon with. The fact that they have failed is a feather in the cap of the Government of India, all the security agencies, every Indian. This is one of the most important conferences which have been held in Srinagar post the 5th of August decisions. And I think coming at a time with what is happening in Pakistan, it sends home the message very clearly to the international community, notwithstanding the absence of Turkey, Egypt, China, and Pakistan, whoever, or not Pakistan, but China, etc. It sends home the message very clearly to everyone that India is in control. That's the important message. Now the question only is this control permanent? Is this control real or artificial? Is it only for the period of the G20 that we could achieve what we could? What are the larger dynamics of what's happening in Kashmir as a part of the evolving world order in which, India's role is so very important, as we discussed on the 6th of May. All this is extremely important for us to take stock of. When you look at a problem of hybrid war under such conditions, primarily you follow the same old parameters which in the armed forces we always look at. That is, we look at the military side, the economic side, the social side, the psychological angle, and lastly, most importantly, the diplomatic angle. Whenever you're encountered with a problem of this nature, this is how you normally go around it to see all these parameters. How do they work out in this emerging situation? So our panelists are according to that we selected our panelists. Kuldeep Thoda Sahab, we worked together. He and I worked together extensively in the Valley, and I couldn't find a better person, I think, who knows the internal dynamics of Jammu and Kashmir security so well. He will be speaking, although he's still not joined in, so we will probably have to forego his part and probably come back later if he joins in. The next speaker would be Sergeant Yusuf Shah. You can see him. He's one of the leading voices on the social side. Very, very important mover, shaker in terms of in the Indian narrative. One of those few people who has taken it upon himself, the cudgels on himself, to actually speak the Indian narrative and speak it to the Kashmiri people. He's been very effective in his communication. I've been following him. I've been in touch with him. And I find that he's a respected figure today, and what he says is heard in the circles in Kashmir. So it's good to hear him and understand what he has to say. And then, of course, Ambassador Ashok Sajanar, who will cover the diplomatic, it's not just the diplomatic, it's the larger angle of Jammu and Kashmir, is the international community, the emerging order, of course, the diplomatic aspects covered in it, but international security-wise. Those are the dynamics. Since he is an expert on Central Asia, the connect between this to this whole AFPAC region and to the region of Central Asia. That is something that we will be looking forward to hearing from him. So, although I did mention that I would probably take on the security aspects personally, if Mr. Kuldeep Khodad does not join in the next couple of minutes, I think I will defer this to be to the first speaker. The responsibility of being the first speaker, I'll defer the responsibility to Sergeant Yusuf Sahab and expect him to give out his intervention first in about 12 to 13 minutes. Now, your time doesn't start here yet. There are 2-3 questions which I've outlined for you. You have already got them. I thought I'll just promptly bring them out for the audience also. The G20 Tourism Working Group meeting was a great initiative by the Government of India to showcase normalcy in Jammu and Kashmir and invite international tourism to the Union Territory. At least a couple of countries boycotted the events, as Turkey, China, Egypt. I'm also told Oman. How much was the local enthusiasm for this event? That's an important thing for us to gauge. How much was the local enthusiasm, considering that tourism is Jammu and Kashmir's prime domain? Was this from the heart that it was happening, or was it just one of those things which were run of the mill? The second question, how much has the separatist sentiment diluted among the population after the amendment of Article 370, considering that many development schemes and initiatives have been undertaken by the UT, by the Union Territory and the nation, and the situation on the other side of the line of control is extremely precarious in terms of human security of all forms, which means Pakistan is in disarray, comparatively a very, very good situation in Jammu and Kashmir. How is this being taken? And lastly, have the threats posed by rapidly rising radicalization been curbed to some extent? How can we make our counter-radicalization measures more effective? And in particular, when you're dealing with the youth of Kashmir. Over to you, sir. 12 to 13 minutes. I will stop you at about 12 minutes. I will give you a signal. Thank you.
Thank you, General Hasnain sir, General Gautam sir, for giving me this opportunity to speak of this panel with such a distinguished figures like former DGP Kuldeep Khodad sir and Ambassador Ashok sir and other dignitaries. It's a great pleasure for me to be part of this panel. So let me come directly on the answer so that I can conclude on the time. So my just thought process is very simple when it comes to G20 in the Kashmir Valley, because I always believe that Kashmir is a prime source of the tourism is a prime source of income when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir, because we know the people of Kashmir Valley usually are dependent on the agriculture sector as well as the tourism sector. But when it comes to G20, and the G20 in the Srinagar, it itself was all about the tourism. So when the G20 happened in the Srinagar, so it gave us I can say a ray of hope to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, especially the youth who were just saying since long that we don't have jobs, we don't have anything to do in the Kashmir Valley. Now after this G20 happened in the Srinagar, so it gave a sigh of I can say relief as well as a hope to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, when it comes to tourism, I will tell you straightforward, because reason because Kashmiris always think about the religious perspective, because they sometimes they feel, because they feel that the G20 or the tourism sector, whatever government of India is doing in the Kashmir Valley, that it may have adverse effect as well, because some people think that they may change the demography, they may have some kind of, I can say, plans regarding the Kashmir Valley. But right now, when the G20 happened, because the government of India focused on the rich culture and the tradition of the Jammu and Kashmir, because I have seen the visuals when the local Kashmiris were wearing the local attire. And the thing is, local Kashmiris, where you might be aware about this Isband, we call that in the Kashmiri Isband thing, and all these things. We have seen the Kashmiri tradition, this songs as well. Okay, how they welcome the delegates who are coming from the different countries. So it is itself gave us this ray of hope to the Kashmiris, that the government of India want to preserve the rich culture of Kashmir Valley, and that's why they just, if you have seen the visuals of the airport was just fully decorated, like for example, we have our own tradition, or we have own customs. That's exactly the government of India have planned the G in the Kashmir Valley. And like you have seen this development things in the taking place in the Kashmir Valley, especially before the G20. You are aware about the smart city projects which is taking place in the Srinagar, in the different parts of the Srinagar city. You might be aware about the polo market, which is right now trending. People are in the Kashmir Valley. I can say, because I'm a youth, I'm talking to people. I've seen a lot of people just raising the issue that it's a mini London. I can say the polo market in the Lal Chowk. Even the once a Lal Chowk, I remember exactly the Lal Chowk, which was the once the hub of JKLF, so-called Yasin Malik, and people used to pelt stones, people used to just preach hate from that clock tower. But nowadays, it's all renovated. It's just business hub. Government of India, what they did a tremendous job is, they just convert these places into the business hub. So right now, the people of the Kashmir Valley, especially the traders, they are happy, because the thing is, nowadays we have such a tourist flow in the Kashmir Valley that first what they are doing, that they are earning something for their family, and they are just repaying the loans which they have taken from last 30 years, I can say. Because from last 33 years almost, the Kashmir Valley was in limbo. We had a long curfew. We have seen the long curfews. We have seen how our education institutions suffered a lot in the past. We have seen these things. But after the G20 in the Kashmir Valley, the whole world have seen that what is the reality of the Kashmir Valley, how the people of the Kashmir Valley, they are such a hospitality. Because people of the Kashmir Valley, वो जाने जाते हैं इससे, मेहमानवाजी से. So we got a chance to welcome the G20 delegates in the Kashmir Valley. Especially, we gave them for example, first-hand information what is the reality of the Kashmir Valley. Because हमारे जो पार वाले हैं, I can say पड़ोसी मुल्क हैं, yes, there are numbers of our enemies, maybe who are within the country and outside country. तो उनकी भी नजर थी कश्मीर में. So it gave them a kind of, I can say, a befitting reply, that the Kashmiris are with the India. The Kashmiri wants progress. The Kashmiri want to grow along with India, along with Indians, I can say. And when it comes to the second question, because you have mentioned the role of separatist, is it still going on? Because I always believe that's a challenging to accurate measure the exact figures, that what are the, for example, sentiments of the Kashmiris, be the sentiments has been diluted among the people or not. But I always believe that it can't be, we can't change, we can't measure the sentiments when it comes to, for example, when it comes to people of Kashmir, because it's all about the mindset. We can't change the mindset. Maybe, yes, we can do some kind of change in the Kashmir Valley, but these things will take time. But I will give an example here is related to that, because reason being is, before the abrogation of Article 370, especially the youth of Kashmir Valley, they don't have anything to do. They don't have any musical institutes. They don't have anything to do in the Kashmir. They don't have any cinema. So they were all a kind of frustrated, because when they go outside, they see the lot of things are happening. They see how the world is going ahead. But when in the local Kashmiri, he's just stuck. He don't know what to do. He don't know what I had to do. He don't know what I had to pursue in the future. So he was a kind of stuck. So what abrogation of Article 370 gave a sigh of hope again. And the thing is, then later on, the government of India has just initiated the good steps when it comes to the youth. I will give an example, and it's very, very worth to mention these things, because the Kashmiris youth, especially the students, they are taking part of these things. I will mention there is a scheme called Mission Youth. एंड मिशन यूथ इज अ स्कीम. उसमें क्या होता है एक चीज कि फॉर एग्जांपल whosoever have an idea, for example youth have an idea that he want to just set up and venture, maybe a hotelier, maybe I can say for example a kind of restaurant or cafe he want to set up in Srinagar, but he have a whole idea that he want to do this, but he don't have money to do these things. If you will ask the bank for the loan, he will charge him 8%, 10%. But same is the case with when it comes to mission youth, he don't need to pay any interest. इवन 70% तो वे ऑफ हो जाता है उसका, जो उसका इंटरेस्ट है या लोन जो ले लेता है. सो होल ही इज to do is just make a plan of action. Whatever idea he has to do, he has to just pen down and submit it online, and he will get a call from the interviewer कि उसका कब का मतलब प्लान होगा. तो इन केस अगर उसको लगा होगा, जो इंटरव्यू लेने वाले का ऑफिसर जो होता है, he believes that yes his plan of action is very good and he can do one thing. एक तो साथ साथ में अपना रोजगार तो बना रहता है, उसके साथ साथ में 10 लोगों को भी वो रोजगार देता है. सो इससे क्या है, एक चीज है, एक कश्मीरी जो कल तक ये सोचता था कि आई डोंट हैव एनीथिंग टू, इज व्हाई इज बेटर. एक चीज है, चलो ठीक है 500 रुपए मिल जाते हैं, आई विल पैड द स्टोन्स. सो थिंग्स गॉट चेंज. नाउ द थिंग इज ही इज नॉट गेटिंग द 500, ही इज गेटिंग 5000 bucks in a day if he is just having set up his own, I can say, cafe or restaurant. I have seen lot of Kashmiris जिन लोगों ने जिम खोल के रखा हुआ है, जिम सेंटर. देयर आर लॉट ऑफ जिमनास्टिक सेंटर्स इन द कश्मीर वैली राइट नाउ, जो खुद लोकल कश्मीरीज ओन करते हैं उसमें. So there are n number of examples. Even I remember the one of this scheme that is called MSME, Minister of Micro Small Industries. Uska ek hai वहाँ. And for that, for example, we are also getting the loan. Government of India is providing the loan to, for example, local youth who want to do something. Then we have a Khadi and Village Board of Industries. उसमें भी loan हमें मिल जाता है उसमें. So there are n numbers of schemes which Government of India gave to the Kashmiris, especially after the abrogation of Article 370, so that the youth of the Kashmiri Valley, who I can say कल तक जो गुमराह हो गए थे, who don't know what are the future, what are their plans. Nobody was aware. Even everybody was in limbo because our education system were totally in dark, I can say, from last 33 years. So after the abrogation of Article 370, things got changed. So this was the point. Then last point is, I always believe that the thing is, what is the this thing is radicalization. That's very important in the Kashmir, because I always believe it's very easy to target a terrorist. It's very easy to kill a terrorist, but it's very tough to target the terrorism. There's two different things. Terrorism and terrorist is two different things, which I believe, because we can kill a terrorist with the blood, that's fine. But the thing is very tough for the government of India or anybody in the world to target the radicalized mindset, because we can't measure somebody from the, for example, we have a Kashmiri, we have a population of most of the population of Kashmir is youth. We can't say who is radicalized, who can't, because it's all about the mindset. You don't know what is in the mindset, what the people of Kashmir Valley, what the individual is thinking about, what is in mind. You can't just measure it. But I always believe that we have a lot of things, especially when it's come to government of India, they can do wonders. Even I always believe that they are taking some kind of measures to just to counter radicalization. But I also believe there are few things which government of India needs to do more. For example, there's a lack of coordination. I always believe there's a lack of coordination between the, I can say, multilateral coordination. This approach should be done with the policymakers, security experts, especially when I can say this civil society organizers, community leaders. That's very necessary to address the root cause of radicalization. Why the youth of Kashmir Valley, for example, why I'm mentioning, because it's not necessary that somebody
Hello. Even Gautam has gone.
So
Okay.
I think we've lost him.
Okay.
He's lost him. He can come back. He's
No, he's come back.
He's back.
Connecting to audio. I think it was very good intervention that he was giving.
Hello.
Yes, Ajit. We'd lost you for a while.
Yeah.
You're talking about radicalism and how to tackle it.
Yeah. So I think that the coordination approach involving policymakers, security experts, civil society organizations, community leaders is necessary to address the issues like radicalization. And second one is education, and more emphasis can be put on education and developing critical thinking that discourage radicalization and promote civic engagement. That's very important. And third point is coordination with the local communities. working with the local organization leaders. For example, we can say the religious clerk, I can say, who are the trustworthy, who have a fan following in the Kashmir Valley. Even I have seen the numbers of occasions where I have seen this Muslim clerks, they are just putting the words across, or they are addressing the people of Kashmir Valley, and they are getting so much of this interest in this. So we can target those leaders who are
Thank you,
trustworthy.
Sajid Saab. You'll have to terminate somewhere around now. After a minute or so, you can complete your thing. You have made some very good points. Thank you.
Right.
Go ahead. Complete it in 1 minute or so.
Right, sir. Right, sir. So, last thing is we need to address the issue. We need to identify and rectify various concerns that people have and target them through meaningful policies. This will reduce the likelihood of being exploited by the extremist group. हम लोग क्या है, for example, we have a lot of C's. For example, the extremist groups, they always look forward. They always look away. How to target somebody who is already a little bit of radical or who can turn out. So they always keep an eye. And there is a need of our to teach our young children the real history, which somehow I believe is missing on the ground. आज तक तो मैंने कभी किसी को नहीं, मतलब I have not seen a lot of private schools as well as government schools जहाँ पे सुबह जन गण मन पढ़ाते होंगे, और आज भी बहुत सारे ऐसे schools हैं, they oppose these things. Why we should it's a necessary to teach our children's kids the real history. आजकल हमें ये बताया जाता कि somebody from the, I can say, Aurangzeb you call, yeah, somebody, Mughals को आजकल आप glorify करते हैं. Why we need to just tell our kids that who are the heroes? It's very important to address the issue. We need to tell our youth that who are our real heroes, who are our martyrs. And one last point which I want to mention, that we should tell and narrate the stories of those Kashmiris who laid down their lives for the country. It will eventually develop the concept of hubbul watanul minal iman, love towards the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Sajid Yusuf Saab. Thank you so much. I think that was a very, very focused intervention in a very short time, and you've covered some very interesting and important aspects. Number one, the fact that a good message went out to the delegates of direct involvement of the people in the activities of the G20. It was kind of a overt enthusiasm, which was very, very evident, which is what the report I also got. Very heartening thing which you tell me is that there is a return, or may I say, there's an introduction to entrepreneurship in Kashmir. This is something which we Kashmiris have always suffered from. If everyone realizes that in Kashmir, every individual, especially starting from the youth, everyone is looking for a government job. Everyone is looking for a pensionable job. While the world is open in front of you, the kind of opportunities you have, the availability of loans, for example, and startups that you can have in Kashmir. There's so many domains that you can possibly look at. In tourism itself, tourism is one of the most underdeveloped sectors in Jammu and Kashmir, despite the perception that it is one of the most important sectors in Kashmir. There is, except for Gulmarg, Pahalgam and Sonmarg, what is there? There is nothing which is there which has been developed. And the kind of infrastructure which is there does not permit enough people to come in. So this is something on which Kashmiris themselves have to focus tremendously. As and when the elected government comes, I hope that this is something which will receive its attention. Horticulture, fruit, particularly the fruit industry, there is tremendous scope for expansion of the output from the orchards itself. And the last and very important aspect on radicalization, and I'm glad you bring in this point, that without including of clerics, addressing this issue of radicalization is well nigh impossible. It's been done by Jordan to a great extent. It's been done very largely by Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia to a great extent, all using the services of clerics. This is something that we have to do more energetically in Jammu and Kashmir. I will not go beyond that, but the last point which you made was again very interesting, this aspect of bringing together civil society and giving civil society a sense of purpose. What you require is a Sherpa. G20 has got a Sherpa. It's got different Sherpas for other things also. I think what Kashmir really requires is a Sherpa who understands Kashmir, understands Kashmiri culture, the ideology, the problem with it, and he is the person institutionally who can go back to the people, seek their feedback, and take them along with them, giving all this advice to the government of Jammu and Kashmir and the government of India simultaneously. It cannot be left to disparate government departments. It can't be the horticultural department, it cannot be the tourist department, it cannot be something else which is expected to get its act together and think that a whole of government approach is being achieved through that. That is not possible. I thank you very much. That was a very, very useful intervention on your part. Now, I see that we haven't got Mr. Kuldeep Khoda with us yet, but we have Ambassador Ashok Sajanar, and I've already introduced. He's been introduced by General Murthy also. I have a few questions for him, which have already been explained to him. Let me just try and bring it out for you so that you understand as to what exactly is he going to be addressing. The first question, how far will the successful conduct of the G20 meeting enhance India's credentials regarding the return of normalcy in Jammu and Kashmir? Will the absence of a few important states, like we spoke about Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and China, etc., will they affect India's credibility in any way? And this typically is required. We can only get this from a good diplomat like you. It is seen that detailed knowledge and information about Jammu and Kashmir is generally unavailable in our important missions abroad, making it difficult to counter the Pakistani propaganda and narrative building. The Indian diplomats' touch with ground reality about conflict zones in India is very, very perfunctory, and it needs a robust, knowledge-based approach to neutralize the Pakistan ISPR's efforts. How can the Ministry of External Affairs make amends for this? Third question, considering the fact that Pakistan is at its weakest at the moment, is there a need to launch any fresh efforts to cultivate the Indian point of view on Jammu and Kashmir worldwide? And lastly, in the context of India's enhancing strategic confidence and stature, does Jammu and Kashmir pose a potential threat which can be exploited by Pakistan? Over to you, sir. About 13 minutes or so.
Very well. Thank you very much, General Hasnain, and thank you also to CASA and to General Gautam Murthy for this very kind and gracious invitation to speak on this very important subject. So in the 13 minutes, let me first start off, General Hasnain, with your own comment that you made right at the beginning of our discussion. And when you said that it is a very bold decision by the central government, and you equated it to the 5th August decision. My point there would be that the government of India did not have a choice but to have a meeting in Srinagar. And the reason why I say is that, G20 is taking place, and the Prime Minister last year, even in Bali, he had announced that we are going to have more than 200 meetings, and we are going to have them in more than 50 cities. If that be the case, could Srinagar have been left out of this? And if it had been left out, what is the sort of message that it would have sent out? That is Srinagar not an integral part of the country as we have been maintaining? So I don't think that India had any alternative, any other options. We've had meetings in Leh, we've had meetings in Itanagar, and of course, all around the world, 59 cities we've had meetings. So that's number one. Number two, I totally agree with you when you said that, they couldn't have the terrorists, couldn't have come to Srinagar. But, even if they had alighted a few firecrackers here and there in some part of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir Union Territory, that in terms of the reporting these days would have gone around saying, that there has been an attack here. It's not been peaceful. Normalcy has not been there. So I think they were not really able to do that. And for that, the credit goes both to the security agencies as also to the people of the state, because I think, as we have heard very eloquently from Mr. Sajid Yusuf Shah just now, the people collaborated extremely well in terms of organizing this meeting. A few facts about this meeting. This is, I think, the largest meeting of this nature that is taking place in Jammu and Kashmir for a long, long time, if not forever, getting so many foreign delegates, all of them together. I think it's happening really for the first time. In terms of participation, I think there's only one country, that is China, which came out openly and it said that it is not going to participate. And for a reason that it is disputed territory. I think we have totally, condemned this statement, of course, criticized this statement. And given the total inapplicability of this, because China did not realize that this is disputed territory when they were constructing the China-Pakistan economic corridor through it. That started in 2015. And that has been going on. China has pumped in overall to go in about $60 billion. But right now, I think in the range of $20 billion have gone in. That is also Gilgit-Baltistan, through which this CPEC is going. That is disputed territory. Didn't realize that it was disputed territory when it was about more than 6,000 square kilometers of the territory was handed over to it on a platter in 1963, the whole of Shaksgam Valley. That was also a part of Jammu and Kashmir. So I think China's statement is hypocritical, totally hypocritical. And I think we have called it out as we should have, and we have completely rejected it, ignored it. I think the other aspect that we really need to look at it is that although it had come out very openly that it was against this meeting, there is not a single other country which has taken its lead and said, that they are not going to come. There's been no statement from any other country. Now, let me also say that, when all these meetings are held, as I mentioned, more than 200 meetings to be held all over the country, it's not that all the G20 members participate in each and every meeting. It is not that the 9 guest countries that are invited, that way they will attend each and every meeting. They will attend the meetings in which they are interested. They might not send their delegates from headquarters. They might send their delegates from their missions, from the embassies or high commissions in Delhi. It happens all the time. So here also, while the names of Saudi Arabia and Turkey and all these are being mentioned, let me also mention, number one, that we did get tour operators and other private participants from Saudi Arabia, from Turkey, because after all, it's a tourism working group meeting. And if you are having, you want to promote tourism, meaning government delegates, of course, they come, they serve a very useful purpose. I'll speak about that very briefly. But the real work is to be done by the tour operators. So you had all these countries sending in their tour operators, even where there was no government delegates who were participating. And from the OIC, whether it was Bangladesh, it was Oman, it was UAE, it was Nigeria, it was even Egypt, it was Indonesia, all these countries were well represented, either through delegations from their capitals or delegations of private sector or from their embassies based in Delhi. So I think the representation was extremely good. And as our chief coordinator, Ambassador Harshvardhan Shringla, said, that the participation in this meeting was the highest out of all the working group meetings on tourism. The first one that took place in Gujarat in February, and the other one that took place in Siliguri in March. So here it was the highest. And obviously, because for tourism, there can be no better place in India than Srinagar. There are other places also. But Srinagar, of course, occupies the top position there. So I think this propaganda by Pakistan that they should not come, it is violation of international law, I think it fell on its face. In any case, as we have mentioned, as the External Affairs Minister had mentioned at that time, Pakistan has no locus standi whatsoever as far as this meeting is concerned. It has nothing to do with G20. It's not a G20 member. It has no rationale to say anything, no standing to say anything about the G20. It has nothing to do with Kashmir or Srinagar after the abrogation of Article 370, the very tenuous link that might have existed earlier, that has also been taken away. The second point I would like to make is, whatever I have seen in terms of the newspaper reporting, the television reporting, the response of the foreign delegates has been effusive, to put it mildly. I've seen what the South Korean ambassador said. I've seen what the Singaporean High Commissioner said. I've seen what the delegates of France, Netherlands, and the others. And I think they are talking only in superlatives. And they're talking in superlatives in terms of the arrangements made, the facilities that were offered. They were, of course, asked, was the security too much? Did you feel hampered? And I don't think anyone mentioned at all about the overpowering security. I think security had to be provided for obvious reasons. All international meetings are provided, and particularly if it is taking place in Jammu and Kashmir, particularly after it is taking place when a threat of the nature that the Pakistan Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto had given, जो हम ऐसे इसका जवाब देंगे जो उनको याद रहेगा इसके बारे में, when he was here for the SCO meeting. So I think security had to be provided, but there was no untoward restriction on the movement of the people. In terms of General Hasnain responding to your questions, I think even I have seen reports even in publications like Newsweek, I think, which are very, very stingy if they have to say anything positive about India. But the title of the Newsweek reporting on this was, India successfully holds G20 meet in Kashmir. So I think in terms of the message that is sending out to the world is very, very clear that even publications like Newsweek and New York Times, etc., however much they might want, they are not really able to criticize it beyond a point. The other advantage, what I feel, is that, the G20 countries, they represent 67% of the global population. They represent about 85% of the global GDP, 75% of global trade. Now, these are important countries, and the delegates who came are important representatives. And when they go back and they send out a message, many of these countries have issued adverse advisories that security is a problem in Kashmir, don't visit it, etc., etc. And many of them said that they will go and try to project the right picture as far as the situation in Kashmir is concerned. So what Mr. Sajid Yusuf Shah was saying about promoting tourism, promoting export of handicrafts and culture, etc., etc., I think that is likely to get a strong fillip, is likely to get a strong impetus. Now, I think the image of the country in the world outside definitely would improve significantly, because not only has India been able to organize it in Kashmir, organize it peacefully, there were no problems. It will very significantly add to the credibility both of our narrative, of our stance, that it is things are getting increasingly normal. And I think these people, the delegates, would have seen what are the investment opportunities in the area of tourism, whether it is hotels, whether it is other facilities that they could really get in. And I'm sure they would have been briefed about the fact that the MR Group from UAE is coming, investing $60 million there, that the Lulu hypermarket is coming, constructing 100,000 square feet of space there for the as a supermarket and hypermarket, and providing 1,500, 2,000 jobs to the youth, etc. So I think it will give a strong push as far as the narrative is concerned. As I said, only China is the only country which has said anything about not participating. As far as I think the point that you make, General Hasnain, about the information level with our prominent missions, I think as far as the historical evolution of the Kashmir issue is concerned, right from 47, from the UN resolutions, the fact what are the requirements, why the plebiscite should be, what are the terms and conditions that are contained there. I think all that is quite well known to our diplomatic fraternity, and they use it to very good effect. I think the problem there we have to see is that it is in the narratives that come out in the media. And the media you would see is slanted against India. As I said, whether it is in terms of the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Economist, the Guardian, the Wall Street Journal, it is basically there that you are not able to create a narrative which supports the Indian position. Otherwise, if you see in the corridors of the United Nations or in the international fora, there is nowhere that India's narrative in any case is found wanting as compared to the Pakistani narrative. On the contrary, and that is why you would have seen that we have, whether it is the FATF, whether it is many of the other agencies, you look at the UN Security Council, the 1267 committee, in terms of the designation of international terrorists or agencies which are promoting terrorism, more than half of them are from Pakistan. And that has all been done through diplomatic means. So I would say that. And last point there I would mention is, I think in terms of the changes that are taking place in Kashmir today, in terms of the benefits, in terms of investments coming, in terms of normalcy, I think that information needs to be communicated on real-time basis to our embassies so that they are able to argue their case very well and very effectively. We have our annual heads of missions meetings here. When they come here, I think there should be special focus on and debriefing on the situation in Kashmir as it is happening. Very quickly on the last two points, questions that you asked, General Hasnain. And I think Pakistan will always continue.
I'll request you to wind up in a minute or so.
That is why I mentioned, without your mentioning, making this point, I wanted to send this message that I'm really at the end of my presentation. So Pakistan will always try to incite and instigate attacks in India. We will always need to exercise care. So either credibility has gone up, we have seen, I think it has also given a huge boost to, I'm sure, to the decision and the policymakers in India, because we have seen that the people of Jammu and Kashmir are also with whatever the central government and the government of the Union Territory in Srinagar is trying to do. Bring in more investment, bring in more jobs, better infrastructure, etc. So I think this way we will really be able to cut out the local support for Pakistan, which is so very essential. And I think we need to focus on Pakistan's attempt to foment terrorism, notwithstanding the fact that we have this agreement of 25th of February 2021. Pakistan needed it at that time. It is going ahead. But we can see the attacks taking place in Rajouri and Poonch recently. And we see all these drones coming in, carrying drugs, carrying weapons and all. So we have to be on our guard, continue to be on our guard. But the most important thing globally is to be able to build a narrative and to be able to share that narrative in a convincing way with the global community. And I think this is a very important step in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for covering this issue very, very comprehensively. The entire issue of the diplomatic side of it, the international ramifications. And of course, you have delved very deeply into the problem within the valley itself. And you, of course, have a very deep understanding of it, which is very good. Mostly, I find diplomats sometimes do not have that kind of a thing, but you have a very deep understanding of it. It's very evident. We'll come back to you at the time of questions.
Sure.
I can see that Mr. Khoda has not joined. So the advantage here is that Mr. Khoda and I serve together as Corps Commander and DGP. So our thought process is almost the same. So I will take on all his questions and answer them myself in a very short time so that we have enough time for the Q&A with us. Now, there were three questions essentially for Mr. Khoda. But the start point is that with both our previous speakers having declared that the G20 was a great success, the meeting in Srinagar was a great success, how do we go forward? Will any deterioration in the security situation will be viewed worldwide from an angle that all that India was trying to project during this meeting was really a fabrication, because there is no truth to the fact that India's control is complete. You seem to find terrorists being able to get through, and the local, and this is what the world is, the situation is painted by Pakistan for the rest of the world, that this is a local uprising. There's a local sentiments which are there, notwithstanding whatever Mr. Sajid Yusuf Shah has to say. So let me look at it from this angle. What next? And it's important from the angle that the situation south of Pir Panjal is still worrisome, with recent incidents which have happened since the late 2021. It's not only the recent incident, two incidents which have happened. Take your mind back to the end of 2021, October, when you had we lost 7 soldiers. At the same time, when there was a spate of minority killings in the valley, it happened almost in sync with each other. Since then, there have been a spurt of incidents many times. We also had on the 1st of January this year an incident of minority killings in Rajouri, where the local Hindu community was targeted. No, this is something which is worrisome. Can all this come back? Is this an effort going on to try and retract the situation in an area where there is comparatively lesser footprint of the security forces? You see, we pushed in maximum security forces into the valley, particularly after 2016, after Burhan Wani's killing and things like that. I still remember the Rashtra Rifles, 63 battalions. I had 43 battalions with me in Kashmir Valley, with the rest of them were south of the Pir Panjal. Now some of the battalions south of the Pir Panjal have gone away to Ladakh. Because you must remember that there is an issue going on the LAC in the northern borders itself. So is all this affecting this area? And the answer that we have to pose to us when we pose this question to ourselves is yes, it is. We have to do much more perhaps in the south. This is a situation where they realize that this long tract of almost 200 kilometers from Jammu to Poonch, the Rajouri belt, the Surankot belt, the higher reaches of the Pir Panjal provide tremendous hideouts for terrorists. So terrorists can stay there in teeming strengths as long as they wish to, and nothing much can be done about it, because unless you do jungle bashing or unless you bring in extreme technology, it is not easy to be able to root out the people, throw out the people from there completely. So this is a problem we are going to be living with for quite some time. And as brought out earlier also by Ambassador Ashok Sajanar, this whole issue of drones, this, that, etc., which is happening, this is all happening south of Pir Panjal. The grid in the north of the Pir Panjal in the Kashmir Valley is very, very strong. Although there is always the scope of a spate of killings for a short period of time, etc., minority killings, targeting of soldiers, policemen, which happens from time to time, no big act is possible. To my mind, no big act. If a big act takes place, that is a major failure on our part. So we have to be concerned that this is not the end of this conflict. This is not the end of this hybrid war. This hybrid war is still very much carrying on. In any hybrid war, conflict termination is the most difficult stage. When you declare, okay, now that my adversary does not pose a threat to me. We are not at that stage at the moment at all. The second question which I had put to Mr. Khoda, with the strength of terrorists at an all-time low, do you think the hybrid warfare capability of Pakistan has taken a hit? Should the Rashtra Rifles hand over majority of the CICT grid for independent functioning by the CRPF, the Jammu and Kashmir and other forces? And await more stabilization and do the dilution of the grid after the elections whenever they are held? Which is the better thing to do? Wait for the elections and then dilute the grid, or do it now? Now the question is, the million-dollar question is, when will the elections take place? Are we in a hurry for elections at all? I don't think we are. 1989 to 1996, 7 years we waited. I think a degree of conflict stabilization towards the last stages of conflict stabilization is a good thing to bring in the political aspect to it and bring in elections. Your credibility internationally goes up hugely. Even if there's a 10, 20, 15% turnout, although I think in this particular case, I'm sure Sadi Yusuf Shah will agree with me, you will find a lot of enthusiasm on the part of people to come out and vote. Question is, who will emerge in the leadership? That's not for us to discuss at this stage. But to my mind, diluting your grid, rearranging your grid at a time when the culmination has not been reached, when the elections have not been held, may be a little premature. And therefore, my strong recommendation to the government of India, do not disturb things as they are. Let that be there, reinforce a little bit in the Rajouri sector, etc. But let things be there. We need stabilization for a period of time. Otherwise, you create windows of opportunity for your adversary. You create chinks in your own armor, which can be exploited. And the last question here is, the security forces are often accused of fighting terrorists and not terrorism, an issue which Mr. Shah also brought out. Do you find a change in approach today? And are the hybrid networks under adequate addressal by the security forces? This question was on the basis of the fact that both he and I and most of our predecessors in Jammu and Kashmir fought more from a kinetic angle. We fought the terrorists and we fought the terrorism. We fought terrorism much lesser. Because there was a need for us to bring down the levels of terrorist strength, first of all. That was a very important aspect. But in the bargain, we couldn't really take adequate measures to bring down terrorism. Today, the government of India is conscious of this and is attempting to do this in a big way. Ever since 2016-17 in particular, it has targeted the financial networks, for example. And without finances, these hybrid warfare schemes, campaigns don't go anywhere. So that's and has been done very successfully by the NIA. But many other networks still continue to function. The drugs, narcotics network is very, very strong, although the police is doing its best to try and counter it, but we cannot allow it to become a situation akin to what happened in Punjab. Also, there is an all-of-government approach which has been taken on today. But again, it is department-wise that everyone is functioning without a coordinated security authority. Unified command, it is functioning, it is meeting very often. But I would prefer unified command to work in a more cogent kind of a way. The aims should be very clear. They should lay down their aims in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. What should be the security situation? What should be the social environment? What should be the overall environment which should be conducive for better integration? All this should be discussed to a great extent in the unified command meetings. It is not usually done. And my last point on this, I think with the beating that Pakistan has taken after the G20 meeting, there is going to be a huge public relations effort on the part of Pakistan. Although they are deeply in the morass, they're deeply in the dumps at the moment, but Pakistan army is still a professional army. It has invested 34 years in Kashmir. It's not going to lose out on this. It's going to make sure that it tries to bounce back. And one of the major efforts in which it has been very successful throughout has been public relations. This is something that we should be on the lookout for and make sure that we have enough counters and make sure we have our own public relations effort, which should not be localized, but which should be international in its outlook. I'll stop there and now we'll see what questions have come our way. Thank you very much. I stood in for Kuldeep Khoda Saab. I'm sure that our views would have been very, very similar. Thank you very much. General Gautam Murthy, you will be moderating some of the questions to me. So you may like to start that. I've got the question and answer icon here. I can have a look.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I
So,
find whatever question, the way you would like to have them answered.
I'll come to the first question last, sir.
Okay.
We'll go to the last comment first, which is what you had spoken about. It's by Ravi Bhatia, who says, although the panelists are acknowledging the need for India to internationally project positive changes post-abolition of 370, India's diplomats stationed overseas are largely ineffective. Mr. Ashok Sajanar could possibly...
Let me just moderate that question.
Yes, all right, so please. Sir.
Although Mr. Sajanar has already spoken on this, and he has come out with his views very cogently, and at the end of it, he did recommend that we need better briefings, we need better knowledge management, knowledge sharing, etc. And I tend to agree with him, because a lot of this knowledge is available. Let me tell you, it's all available in the portals of South Block itself. But the problem is inter-office coordination and cooperation and the ability to get the message across. I very deliberately asked this question because I tend to agree with what Ambassador Bhatia has said. That my experience of going around the world and meeting different ambassadors of ours, very, very effective ambassadors, was this, that they did not have the kind of staff support on issues of internal security in India. And that's an important aspect which they must have. We only feel that foreign relations is the only thing which our Indian missions are meant for. No, the projection of India, the image of India, what is happening internally, all this. Now, for example, what's happening in Manipur today. How many of us can put our hands to our hearts and say, we understand fully what's happening in Manipur? I can tell you not even 1% will understand it. Because most of us are not exposed to this kind of a thing. We need good briefs, therefore. We need roving ambassadors. And one of the things that Ambassador Sajanar himself had suggested in one of our earlier seminars was this thing of special envoys. So I'll leave it to him now to answer this question further.
Thank you very much, General Hasnain and General Murthy, for this. And I take this question, when the person who's raised this question, Mr. Ravi Bhatia, when he says that our diplomats have been quite ineffective, my counter question would be, ineffective in reaching out to whom or to which constituency? First is when diplomats are posted, any ambassador or high commissioner is posted in any country. What is her or his first mandate? It is to reach out to the government of that particular country and articulate your position to the government of that country. Now, the fact that you were able to get 19 major countries as far as G20 Working Group Committee is concerned, that means we have been able to argue our position very well. 19 of the G20 countries, except China, and all the 9 of the guest countries, they were represented in some way or the other. And none of them came out with a statement that which was against India, that there was some problem of disputed territory. As far as Article 370 is concerned, the world has accepted our argument that that was a relic of the past, that was an internal matter, and it does not concern any of the outsiders. That is why you had all these countries coming to Srinagar, they came to Leh, they came to Itanagar. So I think as far as that is in terms of reaching out to the governments, our interlocutors in the governments are concerned, I think we have been very effective, whether it is the leadership, whether it is the diplomatic corps, Indian diplomatic corps, I think we've been very effective. I agree with the point, and this is what I mentioned also, that as far as the narrative is concerned, in the public media, in the social media, that is something that we really need to sharpen. And that has to be an all of the government exercise. It is not only a diplomatic exercise that only diplomats will go out. Another thing I think we really need to keep in mind is that when there are issues of human rights involved, issues of violence, burning, this, that, and the other, then there are so many other agencies and so many NGOs whether it is Amnesty International, it is Human Rights Watch. You have a plethora of them who are very easy to sort of, feed some information and they'll come out with a report. And similar is the ideologically driven many of these newspapers and, that I mentioned. So I think that is a real challenge, and that will, have to be dealt with. And as, there was some discussion going on there. It was mentioned that many of these newspaper articles are written by Indians themselves. And, one of the foreigners mentioned that it is Indian intellectuals who are the ones who are the most actively poised against India's image perception as far as the West is concerned. So I think it is a much bigger problem than only sort of, limiting it to the efficacy or the ineffectiveness of diplomats. We need to go through it, build narratives, and have credibility, go out and say with confidence. I think it is happening increasingly, and but much greater attention and much greater focus needs to be accorded to that.
Thank you, Ambassador, for a very clear-cut and, a great explanation. And it is absolutely right what you're saying, and this is what General Hasnain also alluded to. Ata sir, the next question, Brigadier C. Sandeep Kumar Nair. What would be the advice? This could you take up, please?
Okay, right.
Advice of the forum to the government of India regarding repatriation of the Kashmiri Pandits to the valley.
Okay. I think it's ideal that this question be taken up also by Mr. Sajid Yusuf Shah. But before that, Mr. Ravi Bhatia has reinforced what he has spoken, and I agree what he had written earlier, and I agree with him when he says that all the good work done with the governments does not reach citizens of these countries. This is what Ambassador Ashok Sajanar also admitted, that we need to do more with the media and the social media in these countries. Now to come to Brigadier Sandeep Kumar Nair's question, what would be the expert advice of the forum to the GOI regarding repatriation of Kashmiri Pandits to the valley? And a seminar on a webinar on Kashmir without the mention of Kashmiri Pandits is usually incomplete. So I will give the first word to Mr. Sajid Yusuf Shah to let him speak on this, and then I will give my opinion on it. Yes, over to you, Mr. Shah. Sajid Saab.
Sajid Saab, your mic is off. First, kindly put your mic on.
Now the issue is, why did the Kashmiri Pandit issue take place first of all? Right? I wrote extensively on the Kashmir files when the movie had come out at that time. What the Kashmir files never could achieve in its messaging was what was the reason why all this happened. It happened, I agree. It was informing the Indian public that this had happened on the 19th of January and onwards at that particular time. Why did it happen? This no one really seemed to have explained. And then I tried to explain it through various webinars, seminars at that time, that it was important for Pakistan to ensure that there would be a trigger which would initiate this conflict, internal conflict or proxy war, and ensure that there would be a link up of an ideological link up which took Islamist thinking from within Pakistan, where it had already been nurtured for the better part of a couple of years, took it into Kashmir to take them on board. And that would ensure a sustained effort, this thing that they were looking to fight, a war by 1,000 cuts, that would be successful only once these minorities had been removed from here and the Kashmiri Muslim majority had been given the idea of Azadi in their minds. This was the essential thing. Now, if you ultimately want conflict termination, a victory in hybrid war, which is a very difficult thing to achieve, an outright victory, you must is it necessary to restore the situation status quo ante, which was in 1989? This is something which we need to debate in our minds. because it would mean that we would have to take back the entire Kashmiri Pandit community, settle them as they were, return their properties to them, and that would take, to my mind, a fairly long period of time. Because as I explained to you, the security situation itself in the early part of my intervention earlier, it's not as if the war is over. It's not as if the proxy conflict is over. It is still very much there. It is somewhere, a slow fire which is burning and which can exploit, which can expand. It can be exploited and it can expand. And what is happening in Pakistan at the moment is just the beginnings of a problem which is going to hit us in the next 4 or 5 years. Afghanistan, Pakistan put together is going to hit us in the next 4 or 5 years. The next cycle of global terror, etc. Right. So, in the midst of all this, to think of returning the Kashmiri Pandits, I think, to my mind, is a severe challenge that we are going to face. Not that every Kashmiri Pandit wants to come back. The younger generation don't want to come back either. It's primarily that notionally we want to make sure that the valley has the freedom is there for the Kashmiri Pandits to return to the valley and settle down, and we have the capability to provide them that security. But every time one incident takes place at Anantnag or in Pulwama or this like that, internationally, India is going to be vilified. Now, therefore, at this stage of the conflict, is it advisable for us to try and take the Kashmiri Pandits back? To my mind, no, it's premature yet. This conflict is a long conflict. Which is why I always keep saying that the situation is as it is. You have not won the war yet. You have hugely stabilized the situation. It's in your favor, but you have not won the war yet. Therefore, let's have patience. Strategic patience is a virtue which should be mastered by us, because in a situation of this kind, the situation similar to the Palestinian-Israeli issue, there again, the conflict has not ended. Till day before yesterday, there were operations going on there. This is the kind of situation which is going to continue here. To expect Kashmiri Pandits to come back and be safely housed in Kashmir is going to be a huge challenge for the security forces. And then you also want to remove the Rashtra Rifles. You want to hand over responsibility to the CRPF and the Jammu and Kashmir police. At the drop of a hat, you will find that there'll be a demand to bring the army back once again. Why should we get ourselves into that quagmire all over again? So let's address this issue more professionally, and I think have greater patience to allow this health to work itself out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that exposition. And yes, strategic patience is something that we really need to have to.
Would Mr. Shah like to say something?
Yes, Mr. Shah is going to come on. I've spoken to him, sir. His phone got heated up. He said, I'll just come on and take that. I posed a question to him, sir. Right. Okay. The next question is from Mr. Ranjit Bhushan, who says the Kashmir G20 meeting was indeed successful. Looking ahead, do you think that President Xi Jinping would be persuaded to visit India twice this year for the SEO and later for the G20 summit?
This is for Ambassador Sajjanar.
Yes, this is for Ambassador Sajjanar, please.
Okay, thank you very much for this question. And if you permit, General Murthy, before I go there, because what General Hasnain mentioned, this comment of Mr. Ravi Bhatia, the second comment, and he says,
yes,
India is losing the international battle. Now, I don't know whether I would be able to agree with this comment that India is losing the international battle. I think we have made many successes. You just look at the most recent Quad Summit declaration, and there you have a mention that Pakistan must take action against 2611 and against Pathankot. I would even, bring your memory, your attention to the 2017 BRICS summit meeting in Xiamen in China. And there also, there were about 8-10 terrorist groups mentioned. And in that, Jaish was mentioned, Lashkar was mentioned. All these groups were mentioned that actions need to be taken. Now, that's another matter that, China will accept something on paper and they will not sort of, take action on it. We have seen it in so many other cases, even as far as NPT and so on and so forth is concerned. The point I'm making is that as far as the international battle amongst the countries is concerned, I had stated earlier also, I think India is doing a fair job, but there are areas. And, as General Hasnain said about this security situation, this also, there is always a churn taking place. There's always changes taking place. We have to be ready for that. We have to confront those changes and we have to keep moving forward. It's never an ideal situation. But as far as media, social media, yes, social media has just burst on our consciousness very recently. So how to deal with it? I think those are challenges that we need to take on. Now, as far as this question is concerned, General Murthy, yes, I think it is both for President Putin as well as Xi Jinping, coming twice within a space of about 3 months. I think it's going to be challenging. Since I mentioned Mr. Putin, let me say that Mr. Putin, of course, will be very happy because he would like to be seen that, Russia is not isolated. Russia is, amongst big countries, important countries, and so on and so forth. As far as Xi Jinping is concerned, I think he will definitely come in July because for the SCO summit, because SCO is a Chinese-dominated and a Chinese-driven institution. So, to ensure that it succeeds and, China is able to project that we have a different way of conducting international relations as opposed to what the West is doing. So I think he will definitely come for the SCO summit, which takes place in another 5 weeks or so from now. But as far as the September meeting, G20 is concerned, I think we'll really have to wait and see. I would not like to put a bet just as yet whether he will come for that or not. There are, I think, so many imponderables in the bilateral situation, and things could, move either way. We have seen how since the beginning of last year when Wang Yi came here and twice when Xinjiang has been here, both for the G20 as well as for the SCO, we have spoken about normalization of bilateral relations. That has not moved forward so far. We'll really have to wait and see. And the provocations from China have not ceased, have not come down. So I think there is still time. So I can be more definitive on the SCO, on Xi Jinping's participation in the SCO summit, but not really be able to commit either way on the G20 summit meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think that was a good reply to say that, yes, it is a Chinese show, the SCO, so Xi will probably, or rather positively show up for that.
Show up, yeah.
Yes, positively show up for that, but for the G20, we don't know as yet. And both taking place within the period of 3 months is also an issue. So the other question is, again, for Ambassador Ashok, is what can the missions abroad do positively to counter the anti-India and especially the anti-Modi talk in the foreign media and the parliaments and Senate? Can we not do better than Pakistan? I don't think we should compare ourselves with Pakistan here, but
True.
About doing better.
I think this question has been answered.
It has been answered already. Yes,
by
sir.
Ambassador.
Yes, sir.
So
I
let's
think
take on
there
something else.
the tussle is not with Pakistan. The
Correct.
tussle is with India itself. Because, as has been mentioned, it is our own people who are in, when they are outside, they are the ones who are writing, and I don't want to mention any names, and they are the ones, and because they come from India, they get the space and they get the credibility also that they must be speaking, right. But many of these are driven, whatever they write, are driven by their ideologies, by their political preferences, political biases. So I think it needs to be, it is not a very straightforward issue that needs to be sort of, that there is one response that can take care of it. I think it has to be done from, it's a multifaceted problem and has to be dealt with from all these angles. And I think you will, General Murthy, maybe need a full session to go
Yes,
into
no,
the full
it's
details
right.
of this.
You mentioned about it. You spoke about the social media and the press being quite different from the governments. And the job of an ambassador or a high commissioner is to tackle the governments first and foremost. And we are aware that the press is as free as can be. There are articles coming out today within the country against the government. So these are reflected abroad. I think it's part for the course, and we should learn to live with it and counter it in our own way.
There's a question here
Sir,
from
yes,
a
sir.
gentleman called Shrikant Kulkarni.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm reading
Which
that
I
question.
think we should answer it for the general public.
Yes,
You
sir.
see, members of CASA are still have much more experience, and because of that, their responses are quite different. But this is a typical question which comes to me when I go for public meetings anywhere. The question is, in response to terrorist incidents pre-G20 meeting, which the one which happened in Rajouri, I think we should do another Balakot type strike and eliminate the bulk of terrorists in one go. You see, this is what I talk about strategic culture in India. The common man understands, thinks that the Indian army, it gets up in the morning and says, Aaj marenge. And puts his act together, a couple of bombs and they maro it. Or the Indian Air Force is told in the morning, aaj jao, sham ko, beat the hell out of them. Right? Things are not done like this. This is what I want to explain to people. Things are not done like this. Otherwise, for every minority killing of 1 or 2 or 3 soldiers or minority people, you'll be wanting to do about Balakot. Ye kahan tak Balakot karoge aap? You see, this is where the whole idea of hybrid war, understand this, please. It is to exasperate you, right? They are succeeding to a great extent in exasperating us. In the past, they've done it. Now, today, we are exasperating them through other means. It is not necessary always to find physical means to do it. There are diplomatic means, there are economic means, there are covert means, all kinds of things which are there, which you may not even probably realize, you probably would not be aware of. Right? It's important to understand for the Indian public not to put this pressure on the government of India.
Absolutely, sir.
Because you are unnecessarily creating a situation for the government and for this leadership to look in this particular manner that everything has to be answered tit for tat. No, it does not have to be. You are in a difficult situation, we understand. We understand that. But there are ways and means by which we have to continue thinking about this for the future. I hope this question is answered.
I think you very aptly answered that. Mr. Sajid Yusuf Shah is back. Can you hear us, Mr.
Yes,
Shah?
loud and
Okay,
clear.
okay, great. General
I hope
Hasnain
you
would
heard
like
the
to-
question. I hope you heard the question. The question was more related to Kashmiri Pandits. And since you are a local resident of Kashmir, and I know that you are a very pragmatic individual yourself, would you like to comment and say, should the Kashmiri Pandits now have an opportunity to come back immediately now, or should this issue be elongated, prolonged a little longer beyond the current times?
See, absolutely correct. As a Kashmiri Muslim, I also want Kashmiri Pandits back to their own land. And I always believe that it's a Kashmiri a local Kashmiri Muslim and a community, local community. It is there, I can say, this. They have all the things to steps. They can take the necessary steps to take the Kashmiri Pandits back to their soil. And I always believe it's not only the government of India who has to done something for the Kashmiri Pandits. It's the local Kashmiri Muslims as well who had to take a step to welcome the Kashmiri Pandits to back their land. And if in today's time, if in 2023, if we think that the Kashmiri Pandits are being targeted by the terrorists across the border, and now it's not a right time to Kashmiri Pandits to come back. But I think that this is exactly our enemies across the border. They are expecting the same reaction from us. They don't want Kashmiri Pandits back on their own land. So as a Kashmiri, I welcome Kashmiri Pandits because I always believe now that the G20 summit has taken place in the Srinagar. So I think it's the right time that Kashmiri Pandits should come back to their own place. They should live in their place. and it's a responsibility of this Kashmiri Muslims to protect and the Kashmiri Pandits in their places.
Okay, thank you for that, Sab. But there is while we are coming to almost the end of the thing,
Yes,
this question by the anonymous attendee is very much there on the Ranbir Penal Code. Would you like me to answer that question?
sir.
This is the first question on this.
Yes, sir. We are coming to it as the last.
The Ranbir Penal Code punishes cow slaughter with life imprisonment. Indian Penal Code does not have such a provision in all states. How will the abolition of Article 370 affect the applicability of these provisions of the RPC? It put me into self-doubt straight away, because one was always referring to the Ranbir Penal Code when we were fighting in 2011, if you remember, the whole issue of AFSPA at that time, Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and we had to go into the details of the Ranbir Penal Code. Now, to my mind, the immediate thought was that 5th of August, the decisions have been taken. Article 370 is no longer there. Where is Ranbir Penal Code? Ranbir Penal Code is dead and gone. So I had a little self-doubt. I immediately went back to what we all do today, Google. So I went back to Google. I had a look at Google. I look at Wikipedia also. And let me read out to you what Wikipedia has to say immediately. The state of Jammu and Kashmir has got divided into the union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh after the successful passage of the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Bill. It is the Reorganization Bill in the Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, which was enacted. The Ranbir Penal Code has thus been dissolved. The question people sometimes ask is IPC applicable? Is the Indian Penal Code applicable to Jammu and Kashmir now? The answer is the special status of the Jammu and Kashmir state under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution has been removed. So IPC is now applicable to all over India, including Jammu and Kashmir. So this actually begs the question. There is no such thing as Ranbir Penal Code today existing as far as we are concerned. Mr. Sajid Yusuf, Sab, you may like to comment. Are you aware of anything of the Ranbir Penal Code still remaining in existence? क्या रणबीर पिनल कोड अभी भी चल रहा है क्या? यहाँ तक मेरा सवाल ख्याल है it's been done away with.
No. Actually, sir, after the application of Article 370, we have now the IPCs, because the thing is, I am a lawyer by profession, so I know some kind of
Exactly.
When it comes to local courts, so we use the Indian Penal Code instead of Ranbir Penal Code.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So I think that we have answered that.
Thank you. Sir, last question for Ambassador Ashok Sajanar. He did allude to it during his talk. The question is, did Saudi Arabia and Turkey really boycott the meeting, or did they just miss it because of preoccupation or lack of interest? They made no announcement like China. He did allude to it. Ambassador, please.
Yeah, so since we are running short of time, I'll be very brief, although I did mention about this. As I said, 2 points here. Number one, not all countries attend all the meetings of the G20. They will sort of, go according to their interest. But as far as the G20 working group meeting on tourism in Srinagar is concerned, both Turkey and Saudi Arabia were represented through their tour operators and agents, through the business people. And I think that is what they would have felt, that this is the best way to participate, because it is the tour operators who will be conducting the business. And of course, neither Pakistan, because they would have on their Islamic card tried to appeal to these countries, or China were able to persuade them not to participate, not to send their representatives. So I think it can be considered a failure on the part both of Pakistan as well as China, that they were not able to reach out to even these constituencies. Saudi Arabia, we know that Mr. Xi Jinping had gone there very recently. They've had good relations there. And of course, Turkey has always been supporting Pakistan as far as the issue of Kashmir is concerned. But I think the attempts of both of these came up proper. They fell flat on their face. Thank you.
Thank you, General Atta, sir. Thank you. I think we've come to the end of this. Your summing up remarks, sir.
I think a very timely webinar, first of all. 48 hours earlier, it would have been even more timely, but I think nothing much we have lost because of that. But overall, I think the context of the times, it's a very important thing to catch a subject like this at the time of occurrence and discuss it threadbare. I'm glad that we have not spent time in this webinar on background and things like that. We jumped right into it. I think these questions were helpful to that extent that we jumped right into it. And we had local presence. We had the presence of Mr. Sajid Yusuf Shah, who spoke brilliantly and gave out a good expose of what exactly is the sentiment on the ground. I am of the opinion, and I deal with my university from time to time, I am of the opinion that there is a lot of work still required to be done on the ground. There are the minds, I mean, to assume one fine day that 5th of August has changed everything would be the most erroneous conclusion that you could go to.
Correct.
You have to understand that there is tremendous amount of hard work required yet to be done. You can't be wrong in your signaling. National signaling has to be correct. Otherwise, you see what happened in Manipur, 7 years of peace and how it's got destroyed completely. I mean, what's happening in Manipur is something so pathetic at the moment. You can't afford this kind of a thing to happen in a situation like Jammu and Kashmir, because you got a really adversary sitting on the other side who's going to exploit things immediately. So whatever we are doing today has to be done with utmost sincerity. I'm glad that the government of Jammu and Kashmir has taken it upon itself in such a serious kind of a way. But they should not be on the defensive. When they are criticized from time to time, people are going to talk about it. The media is going to get after them and think that we got to learn how to live with all that. It is through this criticism only that we will refine the situation and hope that we can go well beyond. My last point, not as a warning. I think we need to study Pakistan, not the currency of the issues. These are minor. These things Pakistan has gone through many times before. It is the larger issue of what's happening in Pakistan society, in the issue of radicalization, the issue of its linkages with Afghanistan, and what's happening on the overall terrorist front with the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. Because I think we are not getting the full measure of what the actual truth there is. There is much more to it, and the eyes of the world are on Ukraine and Indo-Pacific and the Middle East. They've all lifted away from this area. We need to put our eyes back in this area. We are the eyes and ears of the world as far as this area is concerned.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I think we've had a fascinating discussion, very perceptive question and answer session. I thank Ambassador Mr. Ashok Sajanhar. I thank Mr. Sajid Yusuf Shah. We miss Mr. Kuldeep Khoda, but General Atta Hasnain more than made up for it. Thank you very much, sir, for steering a wonderful discussion and an excellent question-answer session. I thank our technical assistant, Ms. Barnali, who was able to sort out our problems and we could have this webinar today. And above all, I'd like to thank all the participants for their patience, for being here. And I know it's a little late, 5 minutes late, but we are still not too late to watch the IPL finals. Thank you all very much for a lovely, excellent discussion. We'll be putting up our summary on our website shortly and the recording on YouTube on CASA itself. Thank you all very much. Goodbye.